Favour? Aye. Against? Motion's carried.
Thank you very much. Thank you everyone and welcome to the Finance and Governance Committee meeting. We are all wearing masks, so if anyone's struggling to hear, please just let me know, and for the purposes of voice projection or reading we can remove, but I'll intend to continue as is with the mask, at least up until Friday 6 p.m. So first of all, co-option of a committee member in the event of a vacancy. I believe we have two vacancies tonight, which is Alderman Sexton and Alderman Zuko, and we have here the Lord Mayor and Councillor Harvey. Can I have a mover, please, that we co-opt those two members? Moved by Alderman Thomas. All those in favour? All those against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Confirmation of minutes. We've been in receipt of the minutes of the previous Finance and Governance Committee meeting. Can I have a mover that we confirm those minutes?
Happy to move.
Moved by Alderman Thomas. Any dissent? No. I move that those be done. Consideration of supplementary items. Do we have any supplementary items? There are no supplementary items. Transfer of agenda items. Does anyone wish to transfer an agenda item? That not being the case, we'll move on to reports. So, section 6.1, proposed 2022 council and committee meeting schedule and temporary city planning committee delegation.
I move that we defer this until we have all the committee members, Chair.
We have a move for deferral. Any discussion?
I just might need some advice from Mr. Jackson, Chair, if that's all
I
right.
might just get some advice if that's okay, Deputy Mayor.
Perhaps through you, Chair, just for clarity purposes, this is the meeting schedule for the whole of the council for 2022 for next year. So perhaps, yeah, so we'll go to council on Monday night if it was to go through tonight.
My apologies. I was thinking it was just, I just read over that one, so I'm happy to move it as it is.
Okay, so motion to defer withdrawn. We have a motion to move. Any discussion on the proposed one?
Can I just ask, have we kept it sort of similar to, I haven't looked at it, I'm sorry, have we kept it similar to this year with trying to keep those 3-week periods over the school holidays and some of those things that we brought in a year or so ago?
Mr. Jackson?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Look, the short answer is yes, we have to the extent that we could. I think October next year we couldn't quite make it work align with school holidays, but it does. The 3-week cycle coincides around show week or show day, public holiday as well. So yeah, I guess the short answer is yes, we've kept it very similar to previous years. The one sort of major distinction we've made is that we have added in an extra workshop time slot in the month. So it'll happen on a Tuesday night early in the month, as it currently does now, and then we've added in a Thursday later in the month, which is really, I guess, putting it in the calendar ahead of time rather than the current practice that we're in at the moment, which is trying to find a viable time slot and slotting them in whenever we can.
Okay.
Deputy Lord Mayor?
Chairman, through you to Mr. Jackson, do we know how many of the meetings that were scheduled, so the committee meetings, were actually cancelled for lack of agenda items?
Not off the top of my head, through you, Chair. We could certainly find that out and circulate it out of session before council on Monday night. But yeah, I mean, there were certainly a few, but I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think, you know, like this is always a good time to consider the benefits of, you know, like the meeting structure when we're looking at all of them at the one time. So it would be interesting to see, and I imagine it's probably economic development that is often not, we don't always have those, but yeah, I'd be curious to know, and just whether it's worth looking at our committee committees at some stage as well.
Council Chair.
Yep. So we can get that information circulated out of session, Deputy Lord Mayor. Is there any other discussion on the item? If no one else has, one brief point I'll make, I guess, is I hear what you're saying, Deputy Mayor. I do wonder if it might be a topic for whoever's around as of next October going forward. But yeah, look, I think it appears when I was reading through the agenda to be a sensible, consistent approach to scheduling in, and I look forward to receiving that information before next Monday. But yeah, is there any other questions or comments? If not, I'll put the item. Sorry?
Just a comment about next October. I mean, yes, if we've got a new council, but yeah, I think that probably needs some to be informed to some degree by the current council as well.
Yep. Cool. I'll put the item. Anyone, any dissent? No, there being no dissent, it's passed. Next, agenda up. What was it? 6.2.
Chairman, I'm happy to move this. It's just getting a finance person or somebody with knowledge of finance on the Heritage Accounts Special Committee. We thought as a committee that would be good governance, particularly when we're dealing with public monies.
Yep. Cool. Do you want to add a comment on this? Or?
Well, through you, Chair, yes, I was certainly at that meeting of the Heritage Account Special Committee where they thought that was an appropriate course of action. It certainly makes sense. So the decision that we're looking for is that the Chief Executive Officer be delegated who that will actually be from time to time, but certainly in the first instance, the committee and the previous General Manager thought that Ms Lara McDonnell would be a suitable appointment in the first instance. But the decision we would need Committee and Council to make is simply about the appointment, not the incumbent. And then it will be up to the CEO to confirm the actual incumbent.
Any further discussion on the item? There being no further discussion, I'll put the item. Any dissent? There being none, item is carried. What have we got now? 6.3, lease renewal of the flower room.
Chair, I'm happy to move that, but I need to ask some questions.
Yep, we have moved.
Through you to the Director, can I just understand, so the new rental was assessed at, market rental would have been 13,560. The co-op is being charged 7,566, or will be. The subsidy, is that off the 7,566 or is that off the 13?
Through you, Chair, it's off the 13.
Okay. Well, I'm just wondering, 7,566 for the flower room wouldn't be a lot for another tenant, but it still seems hefty given the community value that this organisation provides. I mean, quite clearly, they are providing a valuable service, not just in terms of the product, but in terms of the community aspect, which they've drawn out in their letter to council. I mean, it's up here and they've obviously agreed to it, but it seems I would have seen a rental. I mean, they are hand and mouth operators. I mean, effectively, the flowers die or there's no one comes in, the flowers are lost. I mean, they are volunteer run. I would have thought a price of around $5,000 a year would have been ample for that tiny space they have.
Chair, through you, it's entirely a matter for committee. The figure of seven odd thousand, the flower room is actually offered to pay that. It is an increase on what they're currently paying, and I think that is because they recognise the generosity of council in having them there in the first place and providing that facility for them. But if
Oh.
committee was of the view that the rent should be a lesser amount, I'm quite confident that the Flower Room Cooperative would be very
Sure.
happy, Chair.
Well, I'll test the floor. I think that this is a very small space when you consider even Mather's house at next door. It's a small house, a small space with a small ante-room. It's very much dependent on ageing volunteers. I'd move that there be an amendment. I'll test the floor for an amendment to $5,000 per year, which would increase the grant amount in our books to bring it up to the Pit and Sherry valuation.
Through you, Chair.
Yes, Councillor Harvey.
Has the Flower Room agreed to this? They're happy with it? They've been informed?
Yes, Chair, through you, they have, and they're aware. And as I said, the rent that's on the report is the rent that the Flower Room have offered to pay.
So they've offered to pay 40% more than the previous rent,
Yes,
which would have
Chair,
been
through you,
$5,000 or something.
Through you, Chair, that is correct.
Okay, well, I suggest the mover of the amendment might want to withdraw it, because I don't think I'll support it, considering they're quite satisfied with paying the suggested sum,
Well,
and they've offered to.
Just to clarify, I'm suspecting that the price was put to them on the basis of the increased valuation. We're talking about a community service that's provided by an ageing group of volunteers. So I'm happy to move to put this item off until the next Finance Committee if necessary. So I've moved for an adjournment, whatever we do with it, to move it away. Unless I've got support. I mean, this is one of those vital community hub aspects, and I think that's the least we can do.
Through you, Chair, in other instances, we've always needed to have their credentials, their books, so we don't seem to have their financial statements here, so I'm not aware of what they make. Is that in the report, through you, Chair, to the Director?
Through you, Chair, if I refer to paragraph 2.8 of the report, so far as the policy is concerned, the Flower Room have supplied all the information that the policy requires. I think, through you, Chair, Councillor Harvey's referring to a recent request to lease a council space where committee made a decision to require additional information over and above what the policy asked for. So as officers, we're certainly very satisfied as to the bona fides of this cooperative and what they do, and they have met the requirements of the information that the council policy requires. And
what
can I
sort
just
of profit
confirm?
are they making?
Sorry, didn't hear the question.
So what sort of profit does this outfit make?
Chair, through you, I don't have that to hand. I don't know yet. Mrs. Parker perhaps can answer that question, Chair.
Through you, Chair, the profit for the organisation for the 2020 financial year was $2,729.28.
Okay. But all of the members of the co-op, they all collect an income from what they sell.
Through you, that is correct. A very small profit, but they do sell at a profit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Councillor
Well, I'm happy with the rent as it is, so I don't need to defer or reconsider.
Yep, Deputy Mayor.
Chairman, I would agree. I mean, we have advice from officers, and you know, like we're actually a finance committee, and we're a finance and governance committee, and I just find it extraordinary that we've got a number which seems to have no bearing in where it might have come from, that Alderman Thomas has put forward, which is a very nice gesture, but I would sooner stick with what we have before us, to be honest.
Thank you. Lord Mayor?
I'm just very conscious that the increase the rent increase is 40%, which is pretty steep. So I would think I think there is some logic to the suggestion that although they've agreed to it, it's a very big rent increase for an organisational model that is a really, a co-op of elderly people using craft and flowers and local produce to kind of supplement their income is a really interesting and important sort of community business model that I think we should try and support. And I think a 40% increase is, just because the market value of the property has gone up, I think is a bit much.
Yeah, can I, maybe Mrs. Parker, I know she's had direct discussions with the cooperative. It is definitely a rent that the co-op have offered. It's not been put to them. But maybe Mrs. Parker can give committee a bit more background as to how the figure's been arrived at.
Through you, Chair, the Flower Room actually put forward that rental increase themselves, so it was not based against the market valuation at all. They advised that they felt that they had a stronger capacity to pay more rent at the moment, and I think they were also cognisant of that they've been there for 10 years and they wanted to recognise the value of that, but it certainly wasn't put from council officers to them that they needed to increase at all.
So they volunteered the increase?
Through you, Chair, yes they did.
Chair, look, on that extra information, despite the fairly brutal treatment that we've been hearing tonight, is they've offered it independent of the increased valuation. I think it's a very sad indictment that they make $2,300 a year, and we're going to take away that $2,000 in one foul swoop. But look, it's something that if they have come quite independently to the council, then it's ethical for us. I'll withdraw the request to amend it, but I'll ask those that have said no to consider some of the other generous things we do, and when you go into the Flower Room, remember that we were in the situation tonight. We could have made it an awful lot easier, and the only money they receive, Councillor Harvey through the chair, is the maker's money for actually the product that they actually have to make to put it out on the stall. There's no money for people who actually work the premises every day and make it really a valuable place for us to go.
Look, I'm a bit concerned here that you're making all sorts of suggestions there. They've offered to increase the rent.
It's only my comment. I'm allowed a personal opinion.
Increase the rent and thank them very much for it.
Okay. Any further discussion on this item? I just have one comment and question to make. If we pass this today, there's nothing, Director, nothing preventing us from going out to this group and saying, look, we do have these options as a community organisation they can apply for in the future.
Chair, do you mean in terms of a reduced rental in the future?
Yes.
No, absolutely. There's nothing to stop them applying for a reduced rental in the future. There's no specific policy that gives them that option. This is a straight out decision of committee from time to time when any lease comes up. However, as you would have read in the report, in times of hardship, as they were last year, clearly their rent was suspended during the pandemic. If I understand you correctly, if they decided in the future that it was difficult for them with the rent that they had agreed and they felt they wanted to make a case for a reduced rental because the trading conditions were not as strong, then that's a variation to the lease, and under the terms of committee's delegation, that would come to committee to decide. But in any commercial negotiation with a landlord and tenant, if circumstances change during the period of the lease, it is open to the parties to renegotiate.
Thank you. Okay, there being no further discussion, I'll put the item. All those, well, is there any dissent? There being no dissent, item is carried. Item 6.4, electric vehicles and charging stations. Do we
Chair,
have
that's
a
for
mover?
noting, but Mr Carr is here if committee had any questions or wanted to discuss the matter in particular.
Do I have a mover? I was just noting. No. Any questions or discussion? Deputy Lord Mayor?
Chair, if I may. Yes, thanks. Through you to Mr. Carr. So the average paid usage per day is 1.87 vehicles. So that means there's only less than 2 cars using it each day, or is that the? Yeah, I'm not quite sure. And also, just in relation to, and I think it was within this period since we've had the charger. There was that time where I think it might have been the Children's Festival held at TMAG where we couldn't use the charger. How we sorted that out in relation to having it available at all times.
Mr. Carr?
Through you, Chair. So there are more than 1.87 vehicles a day using the charger. As the report states, we've been operating under trial conditions, essentially, for the first 12 months. And we are seeing a lot more cars use it, but very few pay for it, which is why we've given a fairly wholesome view of the usage, which basically says the whole cost to council for the installation of the charger and full usage to this point has been $15,000. And based on the way the system has been used, some technology changes are being implemented so that it will be a full park and charge service. So the charging element will only occur once you've paid for the parking. So as part of the trial, we've rolled out a number of different approaches, including there's signage down there, there's CCTV footage down there. We have been now enforcing use of the paid space, and so by Christmas it'll be a full park and charge service. As to the second question, yes, there was some shared usage of that space in the car park around that festival. And I think those conversations are just ongoing with TMAG, and I don't think it's fully resolved, but just certainly an operational matter for us to consider in terms of future use of that space.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Any further questions or discussion?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. But to clarify, the average paid usage per day was 1.87. So only up to a couple of vehicles were paying. The rest weren't paying.
Through you, Chair, that's correct. Yeah, it's been an honour system essentially while it's been stood up, and that's rolling over into a full sort of fee-for-service system.
Yeah, okay. So I'm happy with that. So it means they'll have to pay for the usage. That's terrific. Okay. Yep.
Any further discussion? There being no further discussion, I'll put the report. Any dissent? No. That one's carried. Next item we have committee action status report. So 7.1. Do we have a move? So moved, Councillor Harvey. Any discussion? No. Is there any dissent? No. Item carried. Next we have 7.1.
Sorry, a little bit slow off the mark, but I've just wondered, youth duty. It says here that, which is reference 8 on page 34, says the report addressing the matter is attached to this agenda. Which agenda is that? Have we decided that, and should it be off the list?
Sorry, Chairman, that's an error. You're quite right, Deputy Lord Mayor, that is not on this current agenda, and it hasn't been decided yet. So that's a typo. That discussion on that will come to a future committee.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any further comments or discussion? No. Okay, I'll put the item. Any dissent? With it noting that there was a typo in section 8. There being no dissent, item carried. Responses to questions without notice. So, do we go one by one? 8.1, 2, 3, 4, or just do 8?
Well, they're only for noting,
Only for
Chair,
noting?
so...
Okay. Section 18, noting responses. There's no discussion on noting, is there?
No.
No. Cool. So moved. Yep. Section 9, questions without notice. Do we have any questions without notice?
Sorry, who moved that, Chair?
Oh, sorry.
Who
Do
moved
we have a mover for the responses? Councillor Harvey? Is there any dissent? No. Items carried. Section 9, which is questions without notice. Do we have any questions without notice? Deputy Lord Mayor? Sorry, you're on mute. You'll just have to unmute yourself.
There was going to have to be a time that you said that. Just in relation to procedures in the council meeting, do we have, or do other jurisdictions have any sort of time limits in relation to public question time? And is it something we would consider?
I can probably answer it now. We have to provide at least 15 minutes under the Local Government Act. But there's no time limits, Deputy Lord Mayor. Legislated, we'd have to pass a policy if we wanted to create our own upper limit, but the lower limit is that we must provide up to 15 minutes.
Thank you.
Any further questions without notice? There being none, I will seek a mover that we close the open portion and open the closed portion of the meeting.
I'll move that.
So moved. Alderman Thomas. Any dissent? No.